there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of Storytime with the Scary-ish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz,
Hello.
and today we have another set of homegrown horrors to share with everyone. Adam, why don't you tell us what those are?
Homegrown horrors are the wonderful stories that you, the listener, or the viewer, depending on if you watch us live, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesdays, every Wednesday, at youtube.com/scaryish or twitch.tv/scaryish podcast. It's the stories you have sent us. They can be supernatural, paranormal, coincidental, sometimes extraterrestrial, or true crime in nature. I think I said true crime twice, but hey, why not? Robin, if someone had a story like that, where could they send it?
So you can send those to storytime@scaryish.com. That's our email. You can send your stories there. You can also go to our website, scaryish.com, fill out the contact us page. It gets emailed to us that way, but we also have social media. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we've gotten stories from all over. So feel free to send us your stories via whatever platform that is most comfortable for you.
Indeed, we would love to hear from you. So we have 4 homegrown horrors we're going to be reading this show. Robin, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, well, take it away.
So this first email is from Louis, or Louis, however, which way it's supposed to be pronounced. And its subject is Friedrich Krumhaus.
Interesting.
So it goes, howdy, fellas. Hello.
Howdy.
We're the fellas. My name is Louis, and I'm pretty new listener from a faraway land of Germany. Like I said, I only recently discovered the podcast on Spotify, and I'm absolutely addicted. It's for real the only thing I've been listening to for the last couple of weeks. It's that good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very nice of you.
So I'm going to give a shout out to you guys for making such a genuinely great podcast. I like to think our podcast is genuine. I don't think we make characters for ourselves.
This
like
is just us.
When we talk, that's just how we talk. And I think people that know us know that like we're just this awkward in real life.
It's very true.
But all right, it continues. Enough brown nosing already. There's a little story for you guys. My hometown lies sleepily at the bottom of a hill near the coast of Germany. The air is salty, and when you listen closely, you can hear the sounds of seagulls in the distance. Picturesque.
Indeed.
Life there is simple. The people are honest. Most of them are either listeners.
I was like, holy shit, really?
Are either fishers or work in some capacity in the shipping industry. It's a tiny, normal, somewhat boring coastal town. At least it would have been, but there's a shadow looming over it. Literally. At the top of the hill sits menacingly the old Krumhaus mansion. It was built in the year of 1893 by a rich sailor named Friedrich August Krumhaus. He and his wife, Carla, lived there together with their 3 sons. For around 7 years, everything was nice and good, until shit hit the fan. Real bad. Before I get into it, though, I want to clarify that all of this is real. Friedrich Krumhaus was a real dude who really lived there, and all the crazy things I'm about to tell you really happened to him. Well, partially. Okay? I bet there's like part of it that's legend. Right. Part of it is real, and then as, you know, events are wont to do, they turn into grand legends, and people add stuff on, and it gets all cray-cray. I bet that's what happened here, so we'll see. We'll find out. We're learning this together. Okay. Now, I originally wanted to ask you guys to cover the story of Friedrich Krumhaus as a topic on the pod, but then I realized that you can't find anything about it online, which baffled me out of my socks because this is really interesting and pretty well documented. Everyone in and around my hometown knows about it, but I still had to go to the library in our neighboring town to research all this because I couldn't find anything about it on the internet. I've never seen anything like that. It's unbelievable. Anyways, what happened to Friedrich Krumhaus and his family? Like I said before, he was a sailor, and a very curious one at that. He sailed around the globe in search of interesting and or valuable things, and he found them indeed. In January of 1899, he came back from a particularly long trip to South America with a strange flute made out of, allegedly, human bone. Now, it is stated that he got it from a, and I quote, nocturnal indigenous cult of savages, and when played, it would grant the player immortality. That is obviously all bullshit, but this bozo still went around the neighboring towns and bragged about it. But after a couple of days, he would show up less and less, especially during the daytime. I think you know what I'm alluding to. He's a vampire.
Indeed. I keep saying indeed, but I agree with everything, so yeah, I'm guessing vampire as well.
After some weeks, his wife Carla announced that he fell very ill and couldn't leave the house anymore. Now, Carla was described as a wonderful person full of life, but after her husband's mysterious illness, she became sad and lifeless. She started wearing all black and went to church every day, praying for Frederick's soul. Not his well-being, his soul. On the night of the 16th of March, 1899, the slumbering town was awoken by, and I quote again, ungodly screams of agony. The source was Frederick Crumhouse kneeling in front of his mansion and wailing to the gods. His face, clothes, and hands were covered in blood. Before the townsfolk could reach him, he screamed, quote, "Forgive me, my God. I was only a child. I didn't know any better," end quote, and ran away. Everyone was too freaked to follow him, so they still entered his house, where they found his wife and his sons in their beds with torn open throats and mangled bodies. They immediately started searching for Frederick, and now comes the real kicker. The next morning, they found his only shoes near the ocean, and if that wasn't enough, they were full of ash. And that is 100% real. It is stated in an official government document that they found only his shoes and that they were full of ash. The official understanding is that he went mad, he killed his family, and just ran away and drowned. But that doesn't explain the ash in his shoes. Now hear me out, this is gonna sound fucking crazy. My theory is that he played the flute and it put a curse on him, or granted him indeed immortality. But in the worst kind of way, it turned him into a vampire. Called it, his family knew about it, and his wife was deeply disturbed by it. Now, this was a gradual transformation over a couple of weeks, and when he was fully transformed into a creature of the night, he couldn't control his hunger anymore and killed his whole family. After coming to his senses, the guilt overwhelmed him, and he ended himself via sunlight. Hence, the shoes full of ash. So that's what I assume too. Because, why else would there be shoes with ash in them unless he was like, setting fire, dumping them in my shoes. That sounds more believable than him just being a crazy killer. The house is now owned by some distant relatives, but they don't live there. So the house just stands there and it kind of looks old and sad. And that's it. That's the story of Frederick Crumhouse. And that's 100% real. I spent way too much time in the library, but it was all worth it. The story is amazing, and it's a sin that not more people know about it. I guess this is my way of digitizing it. I want to thank you guys and the community for sitting through this kind of long story. Y'all rule. Keep on creeping on, Lewis. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I'd never heard of that before. But I bet there are so many stories around the world of kind of legends like this, right? Where, people start acting strange, start acting vampiresque, where they don't want to come out during the day anymore, or become like hermits, never wanting to leave. But I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's really one of the things I really appreciate about this particular story, aside from the fact that all the content is very interesting. It's a great story and it's very well written. Is that we get a lot of suggestions for things that have either like a few sentences that you can find on the internet, and people are like, I'd like to hear this as a topic. It's like, yeah, but there's not 30 minutes worth of information out there. So it's, something where we can't always do topics that are suggested. And They didn't do that. They realized that there wasn't stuff on the internet, and they went to a local library and found it so they could tell us this story, which is super awesome. And it happens a lot. And we also get people that send in requests for topics where it's like, hey, I heard of this thing and it's supposed to be da 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 da. And then instead of like actually trying to research it, we're trying to like validate the claim. So they could have just as easily been like, hey, here's a story about a vampire, But instead they actually went and did this research, and it was really awesome to listen to it. So thank you so much for sending that our way. It's so awesome that we had someone reach out to us from Germany with a legend of a German vampire. I want
to travel to Germany one day so bad.
I don't think this particular guy was vampire. Excuse me. I don't think this particular guy was German, but I remember I did the vampire Peter Blagojevich. I think was just like the same. I think the pronunciation's the same as the former disgraced Illinois governor. I think he was Lithuanian, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a similar story, except that there was no artifact that transformed him into a creature of the night. But yeah, that's some fascinating stuff. And like Robin said, maybe we can make our way to Germany in the near future or just in the future.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah, and we can investigate this. We'll just film some YouTube videos.
I don't know about investigating that, but I definitely want to partake in like German beers and, foods and things like that. I think that would be really cool.
I agree. But either way, thank you so much for sending that in. We appreciate it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move into our second, I was going to say creepypasta, homegrown horror of the show. And this one's title is New Mexico Haunting, and it is from John. It starts out like this. Hello, Robin and Adam.
Hello.
Hello.
That's us.
That is indeed us. John from Texas again with an interesting story from a friend. So before I start, let's backtrack to my first story I sent in about a coworker who found an elderly couple on the side of the road who had been killed. Well, this same coworker was originally from New Mexico and shared creepy stories from his childhood. Years ago, he married a woman and moved from Texas back home to New Mexico, a decision he would later regret. I got back in touch with him a month ago to share the podcast with him in hopes he would listen and write in his old stories. Well, he told me he had a recent scare that has made his decision to move back to Texas that much easier. According to him, after moving back to New Mexico, he bought a 2-story house and moved in with his wife and her kid.
Okay.
He said right away he could feel an odd presence in the home, but kept it to himself. As time went by, he started waking up from scratches on his shoulders, back, and legs. Holy shit. He kept this from his wife not to scare her or the kid, but his wife started complaining that she was getting bit by an invisible force all the time. They both took pics of what was happening to them as evidence they weren't going crazy. FYI, we don't have those pictures attached to the email, so... Soon, the sight of a man began to appear in the windows looking at them whenever they would leave the house. So it sounds like it's looking at them from inside the house when they're leaving the house. That's especially terrifying.
This could be a you situation, and it's just a stalker watching
I don't
them.
think so. He wouldn't leave marks like that. That's just... Penn Badgley is better than that. He hides his presence a lot better. Okay, continuing on. The family would see this and wouldn't bring attention to it in fear it would give it power over them. Well, as they continued to live with this evil force, his wife started to lose her voice to the point where she couldn't talk. He began looking up info on the house and area and found out there was a little girl killed when a car hit her in front of the house.
What?
A few years after that, the owner at the time was a drunk and smoked a lot and passed out with a cigarette in his mouth, causing half the house to burn and killing himself in the process. I feel like if half the house burned, they should be required to disclose that information to you when you buy it, but... I don't know. That's just me saying morally, I think they should have to tell you that rather than you just find out later. I was going to say,
but if you rebuild, do you have to? Because it's like a new house.
It just reminds me of like a car getting into an accident. It goes on the VIN number type of thing. But all right.
I don't think houses have VIN numbers.
I'm very aware of that. Thank you. That's why I said
there's no hidden numbers either.
That's why I think morally you should have to report it. All right. Throughout the years, owners came and went, all having the same haunting problems, but would never talk about them until they moved far away.
All right.
My friend couldn't take it anymore and bought a small trailer and parked it on family's land just to get out of that house.
That's like you really didn't want to live there. You're like, I'd rather live in a trailer on a lot than live in that house.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a good solution, too, for people that are like, but we have so much invested in the house. We just bought it. It's like, maybe find yourself not as nice living situation and get out of the place that apparently is so haunted your wife can't even speak. It goes on to say, amazingly, a few days after being out of the house, his wife's voice returned and the feeling of stress left their shoulders.
That's creepy. Like you leave the house and then all of a sudden you get
I'm
better,
wondering if it also could have been an environmental factor, like there was something in the house that was making her sick. But I mean, obviously that's just me being rational and coupling that with all the crazy shit that's happened. It goes on. He put the house for sale and would hear from people saying, yeah, that house is always for sale. It runs families out of town, but no one really said why.
It's bad when someone in town says that house is always on sale.
Always for sale?
Or always for sale. I bet it's on sale. I mean, come on. If it won't sell, it's going to be always like for the cheapest price
that's the thing, though. The sales, there's a record of sales all the time. So you could see that it was constantly being put on the market, and you'd probably think like there must be something wrong with this house. All right, it's going to wrap up.
That's how I feel when a restaurant gets changed out a bunch, where I'm like, that corner must be cursed because the restaurant never stays.
Yeah, we had a couple restaurants
it's
like that
different.
where I lived growing up. And until like one restaurant moved in, and then it's been there for like 15 years. But before that, I don't think a restaurant made it past a year. But it was prime location, and people used to just constantly move in. I'm going to wrap this up. Well, he began to open up and talk about what they went through and tried to get the house torn down. However, during this time, he got COVID and a heart attack. He recovered from both, but doesn't know if it was the evil force still following him to shut him up or just bad luck. He's still living with his family in the trailer, hoping to find a job back in Texas soon.
Nice.
And that is the end of it. That is really, really crazy. I will say, like, I cannot imagine buying a house, having to move out for this particular reason, putting it up for sale, and then deciding to tear it down after that. I would only decide to tear it down if I had enough money to get another house. You know what I mean? I would put it on the market and I would be like, haunted house for sale. 100%. That's exactly what I do, because some people would be interested in it. Zach Bagels would come out of the blue to buy it for like 200 times the value, buy it, shoot like Demon House 2, the demoning, and like go blind twice as bad this time.
House 2. Oh my god.
So that's what I would do rather than try and tear it down, because in the end, Zach Bagels would tear it down, because that's what he did to the last house he bought, and probably sell the lot, and maybe, just maybe, he'll have, I don't want to wish COVID and a heart attack on anyone, but seriously, like, that's my suggestion in particular for that. And here's hoping they can find a job back in Texas so they can relocate very soon. But that one was crazy.
Yeah.
So before we move into our next story, we are going to take a really quick commercial break. And we're back.
So my next story here was sent to us on Facebook. So just so you guys know, we do receive stories from Facebook. And it goes, "Hi, Adam, Robin, Spooky Man. Spooky Man."
Who's Spooky Man? He sounds like a pretty cool superhero.
"Hi, Adam, Robin, Spooky Mom, and Spooky Fam.
Hello. And you all have to yell hello wherever you are right now as well.
Thought this would be a good one for you to read if you'd like. So, about a month or so ago, my mom was out of town, which left my dad, kiddo, and I home to get into whatever trouble/fun we could find without repercussions, because that's what kids do."
I was going to say, yeah, because when parents aren't there, any decisions you make don't have any repercussions.
So when the mom's not there, that's like when my mom would go on vacation, she would leave us with my dad, and my dad would just be like, "We're going to Burger King for lunch. We're probably going to do Burger King for dinner. We're going to go to the toy store. You want Pokemon cards? We're going to buy you Pokemon cards." Like,
there's an episode of Malcolm in the Middle, and I don't know if anyone remembers or has seen that show, but basically Lois leaves. I'm pretty sure her name was Lois. She leaves Hal alone with the kids, who's just like a mild-mannered, middle-aged white dude. And when she leaves for like a few days, he just slides so bad back into being a total scumbag. Like, it's so funny. He starts smoking. He doesn't give a shit about the kids anymore. And then she comes back and he like immediately just readjusts into the person that you've known for the entire series. That episode is hilarious. So yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, I remember that one. But continuing on, we cruised through the channels and landed on Signs, one of the family faves. Side note, so odd, I've been procrastinating writing this, and last Friday I landed on an episode that talked about signs. I must have been in the chat on live and missed that part of the person's story. Weird stuff. I love Signs as much, like, there's so many like religious undertones and things like that in that movie, but for me, I just focus on the aliens.
I mean, there's genuinely frightening moments in that movie, so I do enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
I do enjoy that there wasn't like the twist at the end like M. Night Shyamalan likes to do, where it's like he takes away all the fun stuff, like The Village, which I've talked about a lot. I know some people like it. I fucking hate it. If the end would have been like there was no aliens at all, I would have hated that movie. But the fact that it's like,
oh yeah, but there were actually aliens.
Escalates. We were like, oh, like I sat down to watch that movie and I was like, there's not going to be any aliens. I already know the fucking twist. I got you, M. Night. I know your game. And I watched that movie, and the first time you see the thing walk between the row of corn and the building, it freaked me the fuck out. And I was like, oh no, shit. There's going to be aliens here.
It wasn't corn. It was in a different country.
Well, yeah.
Like in Mexico or something.
They have corn in different countries.
And it was an alley. So it was like they were looking down an alley, and the alien walked across in front of all these kids at this birthday party.
I'm pretty sure it was a cornfield behind the house, and then the alley that led to buildings, and he walked from the corn into the alley. But I'll have to rewatch it now.
Yeah, we can watch it. I'll fucking watch it. I love that movie. Any hoosers, we were about 3/4 into the movie and we hear some noises. We ignore, thinking we're just getting spooked by the movie. We made it right to the end when they're panning around the bedroom when we all heard another bang-like sound. All of us get up to investigate. We move to the side of the house where we think the noises came from, and I flip my kiddo's bedroom light on, and nothing. So we go get one of the bar stools, not OSHA approved by any means, and I'm on my tiptoes trying to unscrew the decorative metal piece that holds the glass over the bulb. My child is on his bed, and he holds up a metal nut. What the what? I hadn't even finished getting the metal piece off. Behind that is where the nut should be. I called to my dad and asked if he had touched the light yet, and in a very confused voice, he says no. So I get the bulb out, he hands me the new one, and we are all so confused how the nut from inside of the housing got on the bed before the first piece was even removed. Now we're all weirded out even more than before, but we have light. So we decide to continue our search through the house. We literally start looking behind every door, behind clothes and closets, and then we get to the guest bathroom. I look around the corner where the toilet is, and there is a clear plastic bowl-looking thing floating in the toilet. What the fuck? At this point, we're all so freaked out, we are sure there is someone in the house. We keep checking every nook and cranny, under every bed, every couch. Someone can't even fit under the couch. Everywhere we could think of that someone could hide. We go back to the bathroom and we're all staring at this plastic thing that we found floating around in our toilet, totally perplexed. Then, I had an epiphany. A few months back, I had changed the light over the toilet, and that was the plastic piece that goes over it. A few weeks before this conundrum, my kiddo was plugging the vacuum in for me, and the outlet next to the bathroom and his room shocked him a little bit. So here we are for a solid half hour trying to find our light fixture culprit, and it was probably just an electrical thing. I think there was a surge or something that blew the light cover off and blew this bulb out. I don't know. I'm not an electrician. Surely we don't have a light ghost. I can't really explain the nut from the other fixture. We never figured that one out, but we're still all shook just enough that we didn't want to go into the crawl space to clear it. So we positioned the closet door about halfway over the cover, just in case someone was down there being weird with our light fixtures. We're dorks, and Mom thinks so too. Lots of love, Q.
Wow.
I think when it comes to electricity stuff, like if I flipped on a switch and no light turned on after I heard a scary noise, I would freak out, you know? So maybe that's just me.
The idea that your kid just holds up a nut that you know should be in the housing that you're currently unscrewing, that is like unsettling to the point where I'd be like, get out of the room. I need to check every nook and cranny to see if there's someone hiding in here, because it is creepy. 100%. So thank you for sending that in. I will say we usually don't cross over the live stream chat with the pre-recorded episode, but there are people stating that I'm wrong, that it was just an alley scene in Signs. There is absolutely 100% a ton of very tall foliage on the right-hand side of that frame. I looked it up. It might not be corn, but it is a ton of foliage and then an alley and then a building to the left, and he walks out of the foliage, across the frame, and then out of the frame. So I'm not crazy. I remember it pretty well, and I'm pretty sure they landed in cornfields. So I just assumed that the foliage was corn. So boom. There we go.
You're still wrong. It wasn't corn.
Okay, cool. This was fun. But either way, Q, thank you so much for sending in that story. We did sincerely appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move into the last homegrown horror we have for this episode. And the subject is, in all caps, boy, do I have something scary-ish for you.
Okay.
Starts out like this. I actually don't really remember when this happened because the campsite refused to share the incident with the public, which makes this even more scary, but I'm guessing I was around 13 or 14 at the time.
Okay.
So this person's no hi, no hello, just going into it raw. Let's do it.
Why do you have to say it like that?
I think that's the technical term. But this happened on the Isle of Arran, A-R-R-A-N.
So the
Scotland.
Aaron, got it.
It's not spelled like that at all, but okay.
I thought you said A-A-R-O-N.
A-R-R-A-N.
Oh, A-R, no. Aron.
A-R-Ran, sure.
Whatever.
The camp was called Bonnie Brain's Adventure. All right. Gonna keep scrolling down. So I should just pause and say, I assume that this is a homegrown horror because it was sent to the homegrown horror email address. And it doesn't seem like it's a pasta time. And it was proofread by my aunt, actually. My Aunt Ree. Shout out to Aunt Ree. My spooky mom is back home right now, so they split the work for the proofreading. But I notice as I'm scrolling that it seems to have dialogue. So if it is a pasta time, then hey, just let us know after the fact. We'll see how wet and wild this gets, and then we'll decide after the fact whether or not this was sent to the wrong email address. But here we go. All right. Every year, my parents would send me off to a summer camp for kids between the ages of 6 and 18. Every year, the night before you left the camp, a huge event was held. It was like an extreme school sport day, mixed in with summer garden parties with the neighbors. There was rock climbing, water sports, tree trekking, races, and plays. To finish off the night, a fireworks show would be held, and then Danger Zone would commence. Hell yeah. That is the way to end any day. Fireworks and fucking Danger Zone.
Okay.
Kenny Loggins would be proud. Anyways, it continues. Danger Zone was a giant obstacle course held just after sunset that kids 10 and above were allowed to participate in. So they didn't play the song Danger Zone. So now I'm upset. I know Kenny Loggins, faithful listener, is also upset. This is a giant obstacle course called Danger Zone, which they should clearly be playing Danger Zone while people are going through it. But I digress. It continues.
Okay. The idea of just being in forest and woods, like those, it just freaks me out. And having an amusement park or any type of thing within a wooded area like that is just, I feel like it's just a bad idea.
I mean, almost all camps are built within forests, so it is kind of creepy. I've been to a lot too, but all right. It ran through the forest and the camp was built just outside of the forest. The adults dressed up as scary monsters that would either assist you through stages or try and slow you down as you ran through the course, lit up with dozens of fairy lights. The winner of the race was given a trophy, certificate, and picture on the wall of warriors, so everyone took part. Interesting. Not to brag, but I was pretty good, and I'd come first place 2 years in a row, then third and fourth the other two.
Nice.
I always teamed up with a girl that I only knew at the camp. We weren't friends outside of it because we lived really far away, but we always dormed together in cabins and did every activity there was with each other. I'm going to call her Elle. Elle and I were about halfway through the course. Okay, I got to stop really fast. Elle's the name of Captain Fake Eye's character in Age of Legends Downfall, which is the D&D campaign that's being run over there if you're listening to the Wheel of Time show about the Wheel of Time show during the off season, so give that a check. Anyways, Elle and I were about halfway through the course when we got to a pretty secluded part of the track.
Okay.
Despite there being barriers to keep kids going off track, she really wanted to venture into the woods this time. Oof.
I'm going to say aliens.
I'm going to say, I don't know why my head went immediately to vampires, but I don't think they live in the forest. But they can do whatever they want. They're strong, independent, non-humans.
Vampires can live wherever they want.
All right. The story continues. She managed to coax me into joining her because it wasn't that dark and the sun was still barely giving light. We wandered about the opposite side of the barrier, making sure to keep a safe distance to the fairy lights when I started to get scared. I turned around to see where Elle was, and she was mid-scavenging small flowers and fungi. I knew she was smart enough to get back on her own, so I walked back to the track. When I made it to the barrier, I dove under.
I don't know. I wouldn't leave my friend out there by themselves.
I would not either. I would like, yo, let's go. I wouldn't leave them by themselves. When I made it to the barrier, I dove under, turned around to check on her once more, and she disappeared.
The fairies took her.
One of the adults noticed me and told me to move along because the race was almost over. I didn't care that I hadn't won. I was worried about Elle. I made it to the end. Okay, so you fucking left him there and didn't tell the adult, like, yo, I was with Elle and she's missing. This is a little bit weird. I made it to the end and was one of the last to finish. Everyone asked where I had gone and then suddenly realized that Elle wasn't with me anymore. I explained that we went under the barrier just to go and sit under the trees and that we barely strayed away from the lights because it was too dark anyway. Obviously, the adults got mad that I didn't stop her and even went in with her. They sent in a group to go search for her, whilst everyone else was ushered away to get hot chocolate and biscuits. Still don't understand leaving Elle behind.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you leave them there? It's, ugh.
This part is shocking to me. I'm thinking this must be a pasta time. We went to bed without Elle that final night. So they hadn't even gotten Elle back yet, and everyone got sent to bed.
So what would happen is they would call the police. All the kids would start getting taken home, like everyone's going home. We're going to start a search party to find this person.
Yeah, probably. I've never been at camp where someone was missing, but when they went missing, one time, we all searched. Like, as soon as we realized someone was missing, we all searched. They wound up calling the cops, and a helicopter wound up finding them. All right.
Were they fine?
They just wandered the fuck off because they were stupid. So they were just like, oh, yeah, we realized that we weren't around anyone anymore, and we didn't know where we were, and we just kept walking in a specific direction. They got more and more lost. So, okay. The other girls in my dorm asked me what happened, but I stayed quiet until they stopped asking me and went to sleep. So you're just not telling anyone what happened.
What the hell,
in this scenario. I woke up at 7 a.m. when the sun rose and went back to the woods. The search from last night was unsuccessful, and a missing persons report was filed the same morning when Elle didn't show up on her own. The first 24 hours are the most critical in recovering people. I went to the tree she was picking at to find a small pile of ripped up flowers, weeds, mushrooms, and grass. I looked about some more, hoping that she had maybe just fallen into a ditch or got stuck in an odd rock. In an odd rock? I never found her. I found her zipper and one of her trainers covered in dirt. The shoe was filthy and looked like it had been stretched to put on. The zipper was torn at the back like a huge claw cut right through it. So the whole search party didn't find this.
Did she not
but
say?
They searched, but you're searching in the spot you fucking left her, and no one else was able to find this. So this is weird. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a pasta. All right. I grabbed her stuff and ran back to the camp counselor's cabin. They confirmed it was Elle's after finding her name written on both the label of the zipper and sole of the shoe. There were many search parties that took place in these woods, and after the incident, the camp decided to close its doors for good. It was completely abandoned. When I started college, I took a trip to the Isle of Arran, Arran, with a bunch of friends. Me and my girlfriend at the time were sleeping in our cabin at the campsite we booked when I realized I could only stay asleep for a short period of time. I decided to take a walk on a path next to the river and sat on a bench. I watched the ducks in the water for a little while until I heard footsteps coming my way. I tried to ignore them when they stopped right behind me. I turned around and a woman stood with her hands in the pockets of her hoodie. She asked if she could sit down with me, and I said yes. Not thinking much of it, I was quite delirious at the time.
What if she was just like, thanks for leaving me, beach?
When she sat down next to me, I looked her up and down. Do I know you by any chance? I didn't fully recognize her, but she looked like someone that kept appearing in my mind. I was thinking it was one of the kids from Bonnie Brains that I just happened to bump into. Yeah, you do, she replied. I'm Elle, the girl you lost in the woods. I mean, left. I think left is a better word. I genuinely thought I was going to puke at that moment. I didn't know how to feel. My emotions were everywhere. I was confused and upset, mainly at myself, and almost frightened. A girl that was presumed dead was sitting talking to me like it was nothing. I started to tear up and whispered, "Are you kidding me?" We had a small, awkward conversation, which I can't quite remember because I was so stunned in the moment, but it was something like this. Elle, no, it's really me. Me. Sorry, I really don't know what to do. Elle, you don't have to do anything. I'm just letting you know it's me. Me. But where did you go? Elle, wandered off into the woods too far and got lost, but I came back the next morning, remember? That was when I realized something wasn't right because I remember her never returning. If she ever did, I would have been informed since I was the last person to see her. I was also part of the investigation because of that, and I don't even want to explain how traumatizing it is for a 13 to 14-year-old to be investigated for the disappearance of her friend. I'm just saying this has to be a pasta time.
It has to be a pasta time.
I suddenly heard my name being shouted from behind. I turned to see my girlfriend and her brother running towards me. I froze and sat there patiently waiting for them to arrive instead of getting up myself. When they reached me, my girlfriend, JJ, swung her hands around me and asked if I was okay because I was, quote, acting really strange the entire night and then wandered off mumbling to myself. I told her I was fine and turned to explain to Elle who they both were, but she had disappeared. Quote, you were talking to yourself and you sounded so upset until we called your name, her brother told me. They took me back to the cabin and asked what had happened. I couldn't talk and instead burst into tears. I've never told anyone because when I tried to explain it to my mom, she told me I was crazy. I occasionally have dreams about that night and I hate them because it's almost like reliving the moment. Sometimes when I'm alone, I can hear footsteps approaching me from behind and it scares me so much that one day I'm going to turn around and see her again. I don't have schizophrenia, and I don't experience hallucinations. Nothing medically runs in my family that can cause this, and I'm a genuinely all-around happy person. I've never suffered anything traumatic apart from that night in the woods. I feel like something bad happened to her. Maybe her ghost haunts the island now, and she was looking for me this whole time just to torment me because I left her. It's a pretty easy torment. But I fear a lot what would have happened if I had stayed with her. I wonder if nothing would have happened. I don't know what happened. If something took her, it was quick and silent. If she ran off and got herself killed, she did it quietly. The weirdest part is that the woods weren't even that big, and every inch of grass and tree was covered, but her body never showed. That was my little story. I know it probably makes me sound insane, but I know what I saw, and sometimes it makes me feel so guilty over her disappearance. I'm sure she died years ago, but if she is still living, I will be surprised and never stop apologizing for leaving her behind.
I mean, the end sounds genuine, but like, damn.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we're not quite sure whether or not this is a pasta time or a story time. The end does make it sound like this is supposed to be authentic, but that's the thing. A lot of creepypastas try and say like repeatedly, this is a real thing that happened. So again, too, the beginning of the story mentions something like creepypastas do, where it states, I can't believe, the place never announced this or something like that. If there was a missing persons case, I'm sure there would be actual official documentation on stuff like that. So it is kind of weird. But yeah, if this did happen, then that's unfortunate and tragic and terrible. I do have the feeling like this was supposed to be sent to the other email address, but either way, I thought it was, very well written, and thank you much for sending it in. Hopefully this didn't actually happen to you. All right, and that is everything we have for this particular episode of Storytime. If you have a story you would like to send us for Storytime, those are non-fictional stories being told to us. The fictional ones go to Pasta Time. Storytime specific episodes are for non-fictional events that have happened to you, friends, or family members, and you can email storytime@scarish.com or go to our website, scarish.com, and click on Contact Us. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. For folks who would like to donate to us, Robin, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. I'll be mailing out this month's rewards soon, not this weekend, probably sometime next week. And then if you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. And we appreciate all of you that take the time out of your day to listen to us, to support us, and everything that you do to make us what we are.
Indeed. It means the world to us. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will keep them coming. So that's about everything we have. Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.